Hi, my name's Janelle and welcome back to Rosery Apparel. I have recently found a dress online that I have completely fallen in love with. It is the Dakota dress by the UK brand Damson. This dress is pretty much all over my Instagram feed at the moment. I feel like everyone in the UK owns this dress and it is perpetually sold out all the time. And just looking at the pictures online, I feel like this is going to be one of those kind of dresses that should be pretty easy to make myself. So that is what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to have a go at making this dress. I love everything about this dress. The way it cinches in at the waistline with some velvet bows, the beautiful sleeves, the actual length of the dress as well is just so stunning. It just finishes right at the ankle, which is just like my preferred length for dresses at the moment. So to make this dress, I picked up this beautiful chocolate gingham fabric. It's a cotton fabric, just like the Damson dress, and the color itself is very similar to the dress as well. So yeah, let's see if I can successfully recreate this dress today. So in order to make this dress, I've decided to use a silver Serger pattern. It's called the Clara pattern, and I think it's going to work very nicely to recreate this dress because it has a very similar shape in the neckline and also has elasticated channels in the waist, similar to the ribbon channels in the Damson dress. Also, ultimately, I'm just very excited to use another silver Serger pattern as they are just so beautiful to work with. So I just had a look at some Clara dresses online, and the Clara dress is reversible, so you can wear it either way. And I actually prefer the shape of the neckline on the back. The front is just like straight, very similar to this dress I'm wearing. But the back has a bit more of a loop, which I actually really prefer. So I think I'm just going to cut the back out twice and use it as the front. I think it's going to be fine. And I also want to lengthen the template piece because I want my finished dress to be at about the ankle, exactly like the Damson dress. I just think that is such a stunning length. And I also need to lengthen the sleeves because I do want them to be long sleeve as well. So I got to work on lengthening the template pieces, and to do this I simply cut along the lengthen shorten line on the pattern and then placed some tracing paper in between the gaps. I then repeated this process for the sleeve template so that my finished dress will have much longer sleeves than the original Clara pattern. Okay, so I've just lengthened them both by about 10 centimeters or around 4 inches. Hopefully that will be enough. I'm afraid it's not going to be enough for the actual main dress template piece, so I'm going to also additionally add another maybe 5 centimeters as I cut it out as well. But yeah, let's cut this pattern out of my gingham fabric. So I've cut out all of the pieces from my fabric, and now I need to mark out these underbust elastic positions directly onto the fabric so that I can stitch up some elastic casings inside the dress. So that is what I'm going to start with. Then I'm going to go a little bit rogue on the pattern instructions, and instead of starting with the sleeves, I'm going to go straight to attaching the pockets onto the dress and then stitching the back and the front of the dress together. In this case, they are both the back because that is the look I am wanting for this dress. So to mark out the casing positions, I actually marked out the lines as they appeared on the pattern pieces directly onto the back of my cut fabric pieces with my water erasable pen. Then before attaching the pockets to the dress, I first overlocked the raw edges to prevent them from fraying. I then pinned the pockets to the dress, matching the notches together, and then stitched the pockets in place. Next, with right sides together, I placed the dress front to the dress back, and then I stitched them together along the sides, making sure to stitch around the pockets like this. I have just sewn the two dress sides, the back and the front, together, and now I need to make some casings to put the ribbon through. Originally I was thinking, instead of using elastic as the Clara pattern suggests, I was going to thread the casings with the velvet ribbon, but I'm not even 100% sure that the ribbon bows are actually functional in that dress. Like, having a good proper look and like zooming in, it does look like they are faux casings, if that makes sense. And I reckon that dress actually has a zip at the back or along the side or something in order to be able to actually get into that dress. So what I'm going to do to be able to put this dress on without needing a zip or anything, I'm actually going to thread elastic into the casings instead, and then make the velvet bows as faux bows so that they're not actually functioning. I do try to make every part of a dress not only aesthetic but also functioning, but I think in this case I'm happy to make an exception because the bows are just so beautiful, and I think it will be easier to make them sit nicer if they are fake anyway. That means I can put this dress on over my head because it will be elasticated and really comfortable as well. So the casings of my Clara dress are going to be just a little bit wider than what the pattern recommends, but hopefully it will work out. So yeah, let's stitch some of this bias binding onto the inside of the dress. So to make the casings, I fold one end of the bias binding in by about 1 centimeter and then pin it along the marked out lines I made earlier. Bias binding is actually perfect for making casings as the edges are already pre-folded for you. The elastic I'm going to be using is only ever so slightly smaller than this bias binding, so I'm going to have to stitch as close to the edge as possible on both sides. But yeah, hopefully this casing will work out fine. Once the bias binding is stitched in place, it forms the perfect casing for the elastic to be threaded into. I then attached a safety pin to the end of the elastic and thread the elastic all the way through the casing. And as the elastic is threaded through the casing, the dress begins to gather up nicely. I then repeated this for the other casing. So the dress is definitely starting to take shape now, and I am completely in love with how this elasticated gathering looks. Very, very similar vibes to the Damson Matter dress I'm trying to replicate, so I'm happy about that. Now I actually need to get started on the sleeves so I can attach them to the armhole area before I can start gathering up the neckline. And because I'm using wider elastic than the pattern suggests, I think I might try and sew another casing along the neckline as well. The pattern is saying at the moment to just fold and press the casing down, but then I won't have the same amount of space in between all three casings. So yeah, I'm gonna have to experiment a little bit with that. But yeah, let's get started on these sleeves first and then we can figure that out. So in order to make the sleeves, I start by folding the sleeve pieces in half with right sides together and then stitch them together like this. I then pin and stitch the sleeves to the armhole edges of the dress. And the dress is really starting to come together now. So I've had a bit of a think about how I'm going to tackle the gathered neckline. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by overlocking this raw edge just to neaten it up and make things easier. And then I think I'm going to potentially stitch another bias binding casing onto the inside of the dress all along the shoulders and the neckline, and then maybe before putting the elastic in, or maybe before putting the casing in, I'm actually going to bias bind the edge of this neckline as well with some matching bias binding because I have some leftover fabric, so I can actually make some bias binding, and that way hopefully these sections will be a bit more equal. And then I can obviously put the bows on the front and they'll be nicely spaced out as well. So after overlocking the raw neckline edge, I then once again pin and stitch the bias binding along the neck edge to create a casing. I then thread some elastic into the casing to gather up the neck edge and the shoulders of the dress. Now to make some matching bias binding. Using a bias binding maker, I fed a thin strip of my gingham fabric that has been cut along the bias through the maker, which then folds the fabric strip into bias binding. And now I have some bias binding that perfectly matches the dress. I then pin, or in this case clip, because the layers were getting a little thick, and I stitch the bias binding to the neckline of the dress. Which once done looks a little something like this. Just look how beautiful this dress is looking. The Clara pattern has just been so perfect to like pattern hack in order to create a very good replica of this Damson Madden dress. I am obsessed. It is just such a pretty shape and style, and the elasticated features along the bodice just look so nice. I love a bit of gathering, and it just is all working so nicely together to create such a stunning dress. So now I'm up to the very last step, which is I need to make some bows to go along the front. I am a big fan of bows. I love the bow trend that's happening at the moment, and yeah, I definitely want to include those black velvet bows along the front. So I have some black velvet here, which I'm now going to have a play with and try to make some bows to potentially stitch on the front of this dress. I just think it's going to just take this dress from a beautiful dress to an absolutely perfect dress. Like, it just needs a little something to make it even better. So now to make the bows, I cut 3 fairly long pieces of ribbon. I then actually followed a tutorial to create the perfect bow, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. I then also added a tiny strip of extra ribbon to the center of the bow to make it look super neat and also help hold the bow together as strongly as possible, because yeah, to be honest, I do not want these bows coming undone. I then carefully hand stitched each of the bows to the center of the dress. Which once attached look like this. And the dress is complete. This dress is so fun to wear. I can't quite believe it. I am so happy with how it's looking, but let me pop some shots in now so we can see how it compares to the original Damson Madden dress. This dress was such a joy to make, and it's such a joy to wear as well. I am completely in love with it. I'm also really happy at how similar it looks to the Damson Madden dress. Like, just by going off a photo, it can be really tricky to actually replicate a dress. You never know how it's going to turn out, but I am so happy with how this dress turned out. I thought I would like do some cost comparisons. So the original Damson Madden dress was £115, and like I said, it's been out of stock for quite some time. I will put on the screen now how much £115 is in Australian dollars because I don't know off the top of my head. And I have to be completely honest with you, this dress was not cheap to make either. The fabric for this dress alone cost me around $110 Australian. The pattern was $35 Australian, and then it also cost me an extra $15 to get it printed. So already we're at $150, and that's not including the velvet ribbon, which also wasn't exactly cheap. I can't remember the exact price, but I'll put it on the screen now. And the elastic for this dress as well obviously had a cost, and that's not even including if I was to charge my time. Yeah, it is a pricey dress, but it actually was so easy to make, so I'm really glad I had a go at making it instead of purchasing it, because yeah, I made it in pretty much a whole day. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this dress, whether or not I did a good job at replicating the original. Also let me know what you think of the bows. I have a feeling they're going to be quite polarizing, but I personally love them so much. I love them on the original dress. I just think they add such a cute detail to this dress, but is still subtle at the same time. Yeah, I really like the bows, but yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about them down in the comment section below. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, it would really mean a lot to me if you could give it a like, and make sure you subscribe to my channel for more sewing tutorials and sewing type videos like this one. Thank you so much for watching this video until the very end, and I'll see you in the next one.